Welcome to another episode of Thrive. We're about to dive into something really interesting today. We're going to talk about the importance of immediate conversations, not forms, when it comes to qualification of prospects on your website. So, super geeky conversation that I'm about to have with Dan Murphy, and I'm really excited about it. So Dan actually runs demand generation over at Drift. And Drift, if you don't know about it, it's the leading conversational marketing and selling platform. I've actually personally used it on my site for the better part of a year now. I absolutely love it. I love the mobile app that it comes with, so I can reply to people even when I'm not in front of my computer. And if you, obviously you're going to listen and watch the show, but if you want to check it out while we're talking, you'll just go over to drift.com/thrive. Put that in the show notes as well, and I'll probably repeat it at the end. So Dan, thank you so much, first of all, for being on the show. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Cool. So we were chatting a while ago, and you mentioned that you guys recently put together this really in-depth lead response time study or report, really focused on the B2B sector. So I wanted to kind of get like a high-level overview of that report and kind of what did you discover?
Sure. So what we did was it's called the Secret Shopper Experiment or Report. And what we did is we actually went and surveyed 512 B2B SaaS companies, and we were checking for lead response time. And so that's a new metric. A lot of marketers aren't familiar with it, but basically, lead response time is how quickly does your business reach back out and have a conversation with the lead when it comes in and express some sort of interest for you, right? Whether it's through a live chat, whether it's through a form, through a contact page, whatever. And so what we found was a couple of years ago, actually, I should backtrack and say, Harvard Business Review and InsideSales.com, they put together this really interesting report that said that a lead is 10 times less likely to ever talk to you if you don't respond to them within 5 minutes. And that makes sense too, because in this day and age, I think most of us feel this as buyers, but as buyers, we're empowered, right? We have all of this knowledge, all of this information at our fingertips. And so what happens is people people have options. There's a lot of competition. And
Yeah,
so
for
if you don't
sure.
hear back from a business, yeah, exactly, you disappear. You end up going somewhere else and finding your solution, whatever job you're trying to get done. So, but it was really interesting to find this like 10 times less likely to ever talk to you if you within this 5 minute window. And so we really wanted to test that. We wanted to take that data and try it out. And we found some really interesting stuff about how businesses lack quick response time.
Yeah. And so was it across the board, like you just found that people were just not responding? I mean, forget about the 5 minutes. We'll talk about that in a minute. But was it like a couple of hours? Was it a couple of days? Like what were the overall findings?
Yeah. So first of all, 90% of the companies didn't hit that 5 minute mark,
Of
right? So
course.
that sweet spot that we
Not
found,
surprising
90%
though,
of them.
right?
No, it's not surprising. And in the world of most companies doing forms and lead nurturing and lead scoring, and there's all this stuff going on in the back end, most companies don't have it set up so that within 5 minutes they can reach back out and have a conversation with you and decide they're ready. But we've also really gotten entrenched in this world where, like where as marketers we feel like we have to do all this lead scoring, we have to do all this back end stuff. It has to take time to figure out if a lead when they come in is worthwhile to talk to, and that's kind of a shame because you're going to lose a lot of opportunities. So 90% of the companies did not meet that 5 minute sweet spot. 58% of them actually never responded to us at all.
58%?
58%,
Oh my
yes,
God.
never responded whatsoever.
That's
And these
awesome.
were like, yeah, and so like the interest was through like we would go on a website and go on live chat, try to talk to them. We would go on and try to send a contact request on their form, on their contact page, wherever. Trying to engage with them, trying to look like legitimate interest
Yeah.
in their business, and 58% of them, the majority of them, never responded whatsoever. And we were counting up through days. I think I
Wow.
don't have the exact number in front of me, but it was most of them fell between the ones that did responded would fall between like a 2 and 7 day period of when they actually
Oh my
followed up and
God.
responded
That's
to us.
pathetic.
Yeah, and
It's
like
crazy.
if you think about it too, is like people like you and I, like we just go on Amazon when we need something. And I'm talking about the consumer end of it, right? This
Right.
is different than B2B, but like if you think of the way we buy, we just go on. Like I was on last night, my phone. I needed an air conditioner. It's getting hot here in Boston. It's going to be humid soon, and so I just went on my phone. I was right before I went to bed. I searched AC units. I read two or three reviews. I decided this is one for me. I pressed order, and I'm done. It's going to show up at my front door and I'm like all my work is done,
Right.
right? And so that's the world I live in as a B2C buyer. So if I'm buying B2B, I expect a similar approach, right? And so that's what this
Absolutely.
data is really showing.
Right.
Yeah.
So, inside of this, the study and the reports and all these findings, how did the response time correlate to the actual close rate? Because obviously, pre-qualifying someone
Mhm.
and getting them into, okay, this checks out. This is a quality lead for me or a quality prospect. We turn this into an opportunity. We actually close them. Like, what is the correlation from that initial response time to the actual close?
Yeah, so at Drift, so that would actually be a great follow-up report, and we could go into depth there and survey other companies. It's harder, obviously, to look at every other, we can't look at 512 companies,
Right.
opportunity to close rate. But at Drift, we find that majority of our business, the majority, so over 50%, happens within months. So create and close is what we call it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lead comes in at the beginning of the month or halfway through the month or whatever. We are end up being able to close that deal within 30 days. So we have definitely seen that, and we've seen that with some of our customers. I can't cite a very specific one, or I can't think of the top of my head one that has that like middle to bottom of the funnel higher conversion. But I've been on a lot of different customer calls where they say they have that because real-time messaging, when you empower someone, you give them the option to use messaging versus email or a phone call. It really empowers the sales rep as well because the buyer is much more likely to jump on real-time messaging and follow up after a demo or after a sales call and have that conversation.
Right, for sure. So there are a lot of agency leaders, managers watching or
Mhm,
listening to this, and they're, I know I'm going to get a couple emails after this show, and they're going to be like, come on, 5 minutes, really? Like, we're running a service based business. Our
mhm.
clients are running probably service based businesses. How do you expect us to actually get back to someone in under 5 minutes? So,
Yeah, and so
are there like
yeah,
best practices that you kind of throw out
sure.
there?
Yeah, and so that's exactly so we started with messaging, right? We were at our very beginning at Drift, like a really just a live chat tool on your website, and it's human to human, real-time conversations. But we realized like how do you scale that? Exactly the question you have. Like how do you scale that? How can you do this 5 minute window? That doesn't sound reasonable.
Right.
And the solution is chatbots. The solution is giving someone a chatbot isn't, in our world, isn't this powerful AI engine that, can do crazy machine learning and understand where you're coming from and give you real-time answers to very detailed questions. A chatbot is just something that interacts with you and says, hey, like either one that provides you with some information based on your knowledge base. So with Drift, you can connect your knowledge base to Drift, and it'll look through and read all your documentation and try to provide answers to someone who's looking for something. Two is booking real-time meetings. So when someone comes in, they're looking, as a B2B buyer, you're looking for something. You can actually have a chatbot on your website to interact with someone, ask a couple of qualifying questions, and if they're qualified, it'll book a meeting for that person right away with the right sales rep. They can do routing. It's smart enough to look at the right sales rep and say, this person's coming from Microsoft. Let's send them to Johnny because Johnny owns the Microsoft account,
Right.
or whatever. And what we found is, and you might think, okay, that's great for the business. It's great for the sales rep, but like, how does that help the buyer? Well, the buyer actually likes that because if when you're coming on a website, you have this intent, you're evaluating, you're looking for something, you're some sort of serious buyer.
Right.
If you can, if you're going through the motions here, you're looking at the right pages and Drift, you can configure in any way you want, really. You can identify, okay, I want to, this person is, or this business is going to be a solution for me. How do I get in touch with them? If you can just book a meeting as a buyer and say, okay, now I know at this point in time, in 2 days from now or 3 days from now or a week from now, I have a meeting with them. I'll get all my answers. Then I'll be able to lay it all out here. I can put it in my schedule. That solves a problem for the buyer as well,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of getting the answers as quickly as possible. At least they have that set time saying, okay, this is when we're going to dive into this, and I'm going to explore this option more.
Right, right. And the pre-qualification questions that you're talking about, obviously those have to be completely customizable. Every business is different, so you can
Yes.
kind of run them through. And do you find that the prospective customers or clients are more willing to kind of go that route rather than talking to someone either on the phone right now, meaning that they take the step to dial in, or or if they know that they're interacting with an actual human on a live chat. Like, what do you know what those differences are, or what the preferences are from the customer standpoint?
Yeah, I think we're moving into a world where there's a phonophobia.
Huh.
I have it myself. I don't know what it is. Actually, I saw something in the New York Times recently where there's this huge spike in robocalls. I don't
Yeah.
know if you've experienced this,
Yeah,
but
for sure.
yeah. So like, there's just like this. There's like the FTC or FCC or whatever whatever the commission is. They're
Yeah.
looking into it. Like, this is big thing. I don't answer my phone anymore when it's a random number. If it's my mom or my girlfriend or my friends, I'll answer it. But other than that, I don't answer the phone ever.
And
And
even your
so
mom is questionable, right?
yeah, my mom is, yeah. I mean, hopefully my mom's not listening to this, but sometimes I'm a little busy and I got other things to do and I'll call her back. Definitely
Totally
talk to her
just
yesterday
kidding. If
though.
my
She was
mom's listening to this, I'm totally kidding
yeah,
too.
okay, fair. Okay, glad we both got that, made that statement. Yeah, so I think like we're moving into this world where the phone is a less likely outcome,
Yeah.
and so like when I was a customer before I came and worked here at Drift, and I installed Drift and I built the process for our sales team to implement and start using it, trained them on it, and kind of built this new way of selling. And when we were first trying it, it was just our marketing team that was on Drift. It was only us having conversations. We didn't open it up right away to everybody, our entire sales team. We had about 25 reps. And what would happen is we would be on as marketers talking to these leads, and the sales reps, I would ping them on Slack and say, hey, your lead's on the website right now. I'm talking to them right now. Do you want to come over to my desk and talk to them?
Right.
And they're like, oh my God. And they would come over, and I can't tell you how many times I had one of the sales reps come over and be like, I've been calling them for weeks and they haven't responded to any of my phone
Right.
calls, and now they're on live chat. What the heck? And it's like, well, that kind of makes sense, right?
Right.
Especially with technical, in a technical sale, like engineers, like most people, IT, you don't want to talk to, people on the phone. And we've seen a lot of traction in that too for non-traditional, sort of like a marketer or salesperson might be more likely to answer the phone than an engineer or, or scientist or something like that, or
Yeah.
IT person.
Yeah.
But regardless, it actually works very well for those markets in terms of giving them real-time messaging. It's at their pace, it's at their leisure. They have the power to start and end conversations. They can continue them through email once they're off the website. I mean, it just adds a lot more flexibility to them. So we've seen a lot more traction. I don't have specific data to say, oh, we see a
No, just
70% more.
anecdotal
Like,
is fine.
yeah, oh, totally. Anecdotally, I mean, that's what like 90% of our customers are like. This is why they do it, because they can't reach people because of phone. And so having real time messaging on the website and then having it baked into all the different parts of platform, which is email and all these other things, gives them a lot more power.
Right. I mean, to me, that makes a lot of sense because really, what are you doing at the beginning of the relationship, or I should say, just the beginning of the process? You're kind of sitting there as the customer. You're not ready to kind
Mhm.
of jump into marriage, right? Like, you gotta court a little. So you want to do your due
Yeah,
diligence. Maybe you want to chat, whatever it is, and then maybe
yeah.
book that appointment. So yeah, it's just kind of like run before you walk, and I think that's a really good point to kind of touch on and really kind of drill home to people that that's how our human behavior has evolved over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that and say that, one of the other parts about conversations which are better than forms or the buyer likes more is that they can be anonymous in a conversation. They can ask a very specific, personalized question that matters to them.
Yeah.
Whereas with a form, you're identifying your first name, your last name, your phone number, your firstborn
Horrible.
child, your social security number. I mean, like it's like to the extent that, my last company, we had 12 different questions in our form. For any entrance into our contact database, you would have to answer 12 questions. So with chat, it just gives a lot more, opportunity for people to come in and ask anonymously before they are ready to identify themselves, before they're ready to, give their email address and
Right.
everything. Just go right in and ask their specific question.
Yeah. Um, so I guess, the next step or the next question would be if there's an agency that wants to kind of implement Drift, try it out, or they want to do that for one of their clients.
Mhm.
Is the next step to essentially, like, what would you recommend? Are you talking about ripping out all their static forms and putting Drift in place, or what's the best practice
Sure.
from your standpoint?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so I went through this again as a customer, and we basically were doing the old way of B2B marketing, which is forms and lead scoring and email nurture and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I would not recommend just ripping it all out and just replacing. I mean, no, I don't think many marketers' first inclination is going to be, oh, yeah, I'm just going to rip everything out tomorrow and see how it goes. You have to start small. You have to start somewhere. I think empowering your sales team with conversations on the website, you don't realize until you turn it on who is on your website, what they have to say, what they're interested in. And when you give them that avenue that's not filling out a form and not identifying all this information about themselves, they take it. You know, we at Drift, before I even got here, um, we lived in the old world of forms. We were doing forms, and we had about a 2% conversion rate of all the traffic. And now about 20% of our traffic has conversations with us, right? So just a lift in overall. Now, not every single conversation someone identifies themselves. Sometimes they're anonymous, but
Right.
because of specific things like IP tracking, we can generally know who they are. We can do stuff like we have an integration with Clearbit, and with Clearbit, you can actually it takes a big and rich data library of all these B2B companies across the world, and it has their IP address. So when a certain company comes to you anonymously, you can identify and say, oh, that's IBM. They're on our website right now because we're looking at their IP address.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a lot of these, like, we were just looking at something the other day, actually, where one of our customers replied and they sent, like, oh my God, I didn't realize all these companies were on my website. And they probably always have been, but they just don't want to submit a form. They don't want to sign up for our trial. They don't want to, book a demo yet. They don't want to go through this form. They're there, they're looking, but we didn't know who they were until you helped us identify them using Clearbit and Drift. And then,
Right.
a lot of them will end up having conversations. And, we see that with quality. A VP or a CMO or a CFO or whatever might not come on your website and sign up for the free trial because they're not going to be the ones using it.
Right.
But they might come on as an interested buyer, yeah, and they might just want to ask a couple of questions. And then, conversations and chat gives you that option.
Right, right. Awesome. Well, I know you put together very generously an offer for our audience. So if you guys want to get a free lead bot trial for 7 days, you can just head over to drift.com/thrive. And again, I'll pop that in the show notes for you. Dan, great conversation. I really, really appreciate you coming on the show, and happy to talk in the future as Drift kind of evolves.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
This episode has been brought to you by Workamajig, the #1 creative agency management software. Show notes at thrive.workamajig.com. Find out how your creative agency can become more productive and more profitable. Schedule your demo at thrive.workamajig.com.